Welcome back to Rugby Obsession. I'm excited to jump into this deep dive with you. You know we love digging into the details, and this time we're focusing on Wales's recent Six Nations performance.
Absolutely. And we've got a great starting point for this conversation.
Yeah, we have this fantastic piece from Planet Rugby titled, get this, Six Nations, Wales State of the Nation after Shambolic Championship.
Matchy, isn't it?
Well, it definitely grabs your attention, doesn't it? And, while the title might sound a bit harsh, the article itself actually takes a balanced look. It acknowledges the challenges Wales faced, but it also points out some potential bright spots for the future. And that's what we're going to explore together today. What went down? Who were the standout players even amidst the tough times? And what are the biggest takeaways?
I think that's a great approach. Let's dissect this state of the nation and see what we can learn.
Sounds good to me. And hey, while we're at it, if you're loving this kind of deep rugby analysis, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future episodes. All right, let's dive in. So the article doesn't sugarcoat things, right? It comes right out and says that Wales had a winless campaign, extending their losing streak to a pretty hefty 17 matches.
It was a rough stretch, no doubt about it. It's tough to see a team with such a rich history go through a period like that.
And as if that wasn't enough, there was a mid-tournament coaching change. Matt Sherratt took over, and the article suggests there was a bit of initial optimism surrounding his arrival. Did you pick up on that?
Oh, definitely. I think whenever there's a change at the helm, there's always that hope, that sense of maybe this will be the spark we need. And in this case, with Sherratt coming in, there was feeling that maybe things could turn around.
Sadly, though, that turnaround didn't really materialize. In fact, the article highlights some rather grim records that were set during this campaign.
Yeah, those records really underscore the difficulties Wales faced.
For instance, they became the first team in the Six Nations era to be held scoreless in a match since 2007. And to add to that, you have to go all the way back to 1998 to find the last time they failed to score a single point in a Five or Six Nations game. And both of those instances were against France, which is an interesting tidbit, don't you think?
It's a curious coincidence, isn't it?
Mhm.
And speaking of unwanted records, the article also points out that Wales, for the first time ever, lost consecutive tests to Italy.
A tough pill to swallow for sure. And the article then goes on to list out the results one by one, and it doesn't make for pleasant reading. Losses to France, Italy, Ireland, Scotland, and then that heavy defeat to England at home, 68-14. It doesn't get much tougher than that, does it?
No, that final match must have been a particularly bitter experience. To lose at home by that margin, it's tough to come back from.
And as the article reminds us, that loss meant a second consecutive wooden spoon for Wales and their 11th straight championship, defeat their longest losing run ever in this competition. It's a lot to process.
It is. But what I find interesting about this article is how it balances those negative results with a focus on some individual performances that really stood out. It's like they're saying, okay, things were tough, but even in these dark times, there were some bright lights.
Let's talk about those bright lights. The article gives special attention to a few players, and first among them is Jack Morgan. They really make a case for him being a world-class performer at open side flanker, week in, week out. And get this, he played every single minute of the campaign, all 400 of them.
That's incredible. And it's not just the minutes, it's the impact he had in those minutes.
Right. 88 tackles, a new Six Nations record for Wales, most dominant tackles, joint most carries. I mean, those stats speak for themselves, don't they?
Absolutely. They paint a picture of a player who is absolutely everywhere, putting his body on the line, leading from the front. And, the article mentions that Eddie Jones sees him as a nailed-on starter for the British and Irish Lions, which really underlines his quality.
Next up, we have Blair Murray, and the article highlights his development throughout the tournament, particularly after Sherratt took over. They talk about his versatility, his attacking flair, and once again, the numbers back it up. Most meters gained, most line breaks, most defenders beaten, most offloads for Wales. He sounds like a real exciting prospect.
He does, doesn't he? He seems to have that X factor, that ability to make something happen out of nothing. And those stats suggest he wasn't afraid to take risks and really go for it.
The article also shines a light on Dewey Lake, who unfortunately missed the first 3 rounds through injury. But upon his return as hooker, they emphasize his impact, especially his accuracy in the set piece and his physical presence on the field. They even mention him as a potential Lion, which is high praise.
It is, and it shows the kind of quality he possesses. A reliable set piece is so crucial, and for him to come back from injury and make such a difference, it speaks volumes about his character and ability.
Last but not least, they mention Dafydd Jenkins, a player highly regarded both within Wales and at his club, Exeter Chiefs. Even in a team that was, as the article puts it, often physically outmatched, Jenkins stood out for his work rate in defense, at the breakdown, and as a lineout jumper.
It's really encouraging to see a young player like Jenkins making his mark, even in a struggling side. It shows that the future of Welsh rugby is in good hands.
So, even though the overall picture was pretty bleak, the article does a good job of highlighting some individual positives. But what about at a team level? Did they see any glimmers of hope during the campaign?
They did, and this is where things get interesting, I think.
I agree. Because even in a string of losses, you can sometimes see those moments, those flashes of brilliance that suggest there's something to build on.
Precisely. And the article specifically mentions the first half against Ireland and the second half against Scotland as periods where Wales really troubled their opponents. They even use the phrase, signs of a competent test team, which is quite a statement considering the context.
It's a shame they couldn't string together a full 80-minute performance in those games, isn't it?
It is. But I think it's those moments, those glimpses of what they're capable of that a future coaching team can latch onto and try to build upon.
It's like they have the pieces, they just need to figure out how to put them together. And hey, if you're enjoying this kind of in-depth analysis, remember to subscribe to Rugby Obsession for more deep dives like this. Now, the article doesn't just focus on the positives, it also delves into what went wrong. What were some of the key regrets from this campaign?
Well, one that really stands out is the missed opportunity against Italy. The article suggests that Wales had chances to win that match and break that losing streak, but they couldn't capitalize on them. That must have been a tough one to take.
It must have been. And then there was the match against Ireland where they scored an early try in the second half but couldn't build on that momentum. The article suggests that ill discipline ultimately cost them that game.
Those are the moments that can make all the difference, aren't they? A little bit of composure, a little bit more discipline, and the outcome could have been very different.
Absolutely. And then against Scotland, there was that disallowed try right at the end, which would have given them a dramatic victory. The article calls it a costly moment, and I think that's an understatement.
Absolutely. Sometimes it's those fine margins, those inches, that separate winning and losing.
And of course, we can't forget about the final match against England. The article doesn't mince words, calling the 10 tries conceded at home an ultimate embarrassment.
There's no other way to put it, is there? It was a tough day at the office for Wales, and I'm sure they'll be using that experience as motivation to come back stronger.
So, taking all of this into account, what would you say is the biggest takeaway from this Planet Rugby piece?
Well, I think despite all the negativity surrounding this campaign, the article ultimately strikes a hopeful tone. They acknowledge the individual talent within the Welsh squad, players like Morgan and Murray who've shown they can compete at the highest level. And those flashes of brilliance, those moments where Wales looked like a genuine test team, they offer a foundation, however fragile, for the future.
It's like they're saying, don't give up on Wales just yet.
Exactly. There's work to be done, no doubt, but there's also potential there waiting to be unlocked.
So there you have it, a deep dive into Wales' Six Nations campaign, guided by the excellent analysis from Planet Rugby.
It's a campaign that will spark debate and discussion for sure.
And that's what we want. What are your thoughts? What were your biggest takeaways from this deep dive? Do you agree with the article's assessment? Head down to the comments and let us know what you think. We're always keen to hear your perspectives. And if you enjoyed this kind of in-depth rugby chat, don't forget to subscribe to Rugby Obsession for more. Thanks for tuning in.
We look forward to having you back for our next deep dive.
See you then.